Q&A section. By the way, Kuba is recording, so hopefully you are all okay with that. So at the end of the session, we are thinking we can do the Q&A. So if you have any questions, keep them for later, or you can just write them in the comment section. So if there's something related to actually to what we are talking about, that's fine, etc. We will gladly answer them. So like I said, I'm Kamila Hankiewicz. I'm also working in Untrite. Just to give you a short background on what we do, we also work in AI. So ChatGPT is very close to our hearts, or should I say keyboard.
I don't know. No, Kuba, you are moving, so it's not me.
Yeah, Kamila.
World is sorry, yes?
You froze a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's good.
Okay, I was just saying that it will be like we thought it would be a good idea to run this workshop to structure the knowledge we have around AI and the progress of AI, which is currently happening, and explain how business leaders can take advantage of it. So in my case alone, as I work with business leaders on the strategic part, in only last 2 weeks alone, I had at least 10 conversations with our partners and prospects where someone mentioned ChatGPT. So it's like a pattern now, and AI, as you probably have seen, probably you've already used the ChatGPT, has the potential to automate lots of processes. So in this webinar, we thought we can discuss the non-technical aspects of AI and show you some and talk about some real life use cases in the organizations. So ideally, from this webinar, you could get step-by-step solution steps how to start experimenting with AI and understand the risks so you can avoid them. So Kuba, maybe you can start just explaining a little bit of what's this craze around ChatGPT, like why this happened and why now?
Yes, thank you, Kamila. It's very, very, very interesting. And well, ChatGPT is very interesting. Also, because it sort of happened very, very suddenly, and everyone in like the technical field is quite amazed at how popular it is. Because those models, the kind of large language models, which ChatGPT is a part of, were available for a couple of years already. And like GPT-3, for example, I think a lot of people heard about that model. GPT-3 was available for a couple of months, if not a year, before ChatGPT, but yet it wasn't so popular. What ChatGPT brought to the table is this conversational interface where, without any technical knowledge, any sort of work, you could interact with a model like that. And another interesting thing there is that GPT models and those large language models, generative large language models, they are at the heart, they're very, very simple, right? They're only, what they're trying to do is predict what the next word should be. And that's really it. And like this, the kind of the magic that happens, the magic that we see when we interact with ChatGPT and say, oh my God, how did it know how to write this novel or this email? It really is the model's only thing like, what should the next word be? But it's been trained on so much information that is sort of manage to model the way humans think, the way humans would want to interact with text, and how a human would write something that well, you instructed the model to do. And I think it's important to understand this kind of underlying fact that it's only trying to predict the next word, because we'll be coming back to that, because some of the problems, some of the obstacles, and some of the risks around ChatGPT are related to this, that it's only thinking of what the next word should be. But we'll dive into that a bit later on in this webinar.
Yeah, thank you. And Pete, I know that you've been using a lot of technology in your home as well. There's obviously Alexa and all the smart applications. So you know that there are a lot. There's like AI is surrounding us, right? Like AI applications are surrounding us. But only now people are starting, or like organizations actually are starting to look into and focus more on the language part of AI.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, why is AI important now, I guess, is the question. And over the last 20 years, the speed of technology has been tremendous. Some 30 years since after I started in technology, and we learned about this thing called Moore's law, where technology doubles in speed and halves in size every 18 months. That's broadly true. Still, after sort of 20, 30 years. And that leads us to this point today, right, where the sheer volume of data that gets generated either by human beings or by our machines, it far outpaces our human ability to absorb and interpret that data, which means that we can't make those complex decisions based on data because we can't consume enough. And for me, AI is that suite of tools that make it possible for the machines to learn from experience. So we talk about natural language, and we talk about machine learning, and we can adjust those models to new inputs, and they can perform human-like tasks. For me, this is about automation of repetitive learning and discovery through data sets, huge data sets in lots of cases. So instead of kind of automating a manual task, which is kind of the RPA, the remnants of AI, 20 years, 30 years ago, and we still use it today, of course. The modern AI is about performing frequent, high volume, computerized tasks, and it does it really reliably, and it doesn't get tired, it doesn't take holidays, and all the things that we've talked about a million times before. Of course, that doesn't remove humans. We're still required to set up the system and make sure that it asks the questions that we want to be answered, and that we feed it with the right sets of data, right? And if you look at the AI examples that are around us, you mentioned some of the smart speaker technology. I have a smart home myself, but think even further back. There's been AI in chess computer games as an example for years and years and years, but people don't think of that as AI. If you look at what vehicle automation, self-driving cars, again, this relies on deep learning and the natural language processing from tons and tons of data and recognizing patterns inside of that data. And for me, ChatGPT is brilliant because a couple of things I think about is it's only really got data plugged in up to 2021, but it's been so forceful in the market for allowing or making company leaders open their eyes and say there's value to this AI stuff somewhere. And then we now talk about these huge repositories of data. Kuba refers to them often as in our conversations as siloed data. But using AI, we can use technologies and train the computers to accomplish very specific things. But of course, we do need access to that data. For me personally, in my opinion, artificial intelligence pretty much forms the basis for all modern and ongoing computer learning. It's kind of the future of what complex decision making will be. So for me, that's why it's important right now.
I think it's
a very interesting take that AI can be the answer to the data problem that we have, that there's so much data produced. How can you ever be able to deal with it, right? Like, what's the statistic that every minute there's like 10 hours of video uploaded to YouTube? The same thing happens with text, with social media, with documents in organizations. Everywhere you have so much data, you wouldn't be able to read all of it in your lifetime. But conversely, of course, this can be the other way around as well, that people use ChatGPT, for example, now to produce so much data, even more data than they produced before. So this can go both ways.
Yeah, AI adapts through progressive learning algorithms, as we've talked about before. And it is looking for structure and regularities, or in fact irregularities in the data, right? And as it finds those through machine learning, these algorithms acquire new skills. So in the same way that for years we've had algorithms that can play chess and they can adapt to their opponent. Now we can teach things to go to that next level, and the model will adapt every time you give it new data. And in fact, in some of the use cases we'll talk about later, we've seen that for ourselves very recently, Kuba.
Yeah, and Kuba, you mentioned about hallucination of tools like ChatGPT. So sometimes the results are not going to be accurate, but they will still look like they're convincing.
ChatGPT always responds with authority, which is interesting. In fact, I read something on one of the internet channels recently where somebody had asked it for some historic quotes from people that are still living, and it gave out a quote from somebody that was that died in the 18th century, and then the follow-up question was, "Oh, is this person still alive?" And ChatGPT said, "Oh, this person was alive from this date to that date," so it didn't actually answer the question that was asked, but answered a different question. So it was quite interesting.
Yeah, it's even on the ChatGPT's kind of announcement posts, they have an example with someone asking, like a trainer asking ChatGPT, "Tell me about Christopher Columbus' visit to US in 2015." And it answers, "Oh, Chris visited US in 2015. He was very happy. He went to New York and Los Angeles." And some, and this is exactly one of the, I think, biggest obstacles to using ChatGPT for anything other than this kind of creativity and kind of writing stories and novels, posts, and stuff like that. Because you cannot, at least right now, you cannot rely on it giving you factual information or even information, rooted in reality in any sense of the word. And that comes back to this, to the kind of the core tenet of what ChatGPT and other models like that do. They predict the next word, and ChatGPT was optimized to sound authoritative and convincing, right? Literally, this was one of the metrics they optimized for when training the model. So what it's trying to do is not trying to give you a correct answer or correct paragraph or a sentence. It's trying to give you something that sounds like something that a human would write. And so, for example, there is a big kind of group of use cases for using ChatGPT or other models. There's like a model called Copilot that GitHub has for writing code, right? It will write, you can ask it, write me a Python program that does X. It will give you some code. That code might even work, but you're not sure if it's correct. And in that, you can imagine the value and the job of humans in that context, moving from writing things or creating things to being this kind of shepherd and verifier, right? So you can understand, in that case, understand the code and say, all right, this is, everything is correct, but this one thing is incorrect. and you can fix that. But to do that, you have to understand how. You have to be an engineer, right? And so the same thing goes for writing essays, right? You want factual information in them, so you have to be knowledgeable in that domain. And models like ChatGPT can help you with, giving you a first draft, and that's the thing it is, right? A first draft that you have to go through and understand and verify and fix. And so yeah.
So Kuba and Pete, so moving on to applying technologies such as ChatGPT in internal operations and company data, I can see why like it presents some risks. So the data, it's not so easily like you cannot easily verify it. It's not reliable. And I also heard, I think you told me that people started like using ChatGPT on company like secure or like confidential data, and this is worrying.
Yeah, so it's possible to cut and paste data into ChatGPT and run some queries on it. Why on earth would you do that with your corporate data? Why would anybody want to do that? It suddenly becomes public domain data at that point. That's madness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was reading this report actually about that, and it is a security company that runs security for organizations. They blocked, I think it was like 2.5% of people. So like 2.5% of the employees of the companies, of the client companies of the security company, try to copy in company's confidential data into ChatGPT. So there's like an executive that copied their whole next year strategy into ChatGPT and said, generate me a PowerPoint presentation out of it. Even worse, there was like a medical doctor that copied patient's data and said, generate me an email for this patient, along with this patient's name and surname, date of birth, and address. And obviously, OpenAI, who are the owners of ChatGPT and like the APIs, they log all of this, right?
Yeah.
They log all of this. That's first thing. And second thing, in the next versions of ChatGPT or other models, they will use this information to train the models. And actually, so sometimes there is a conversation around the security of the models, and people say, oh, it's like the model kind of averages out information from all of the sources that it was trained on. But some researchers show that you can actually extract verbatim the information that was used to train the models. So yes, it's true that actually those models are basically, you take the data, you put it in like a big bucket, you kind of blend it with a high-speed blender, and then that's the information that the model uses. But it can also reconstruct sometimes, for some models, actual information it was trained on. So it was like personal data, it can spit out the personal data.
Yeah, the important thing here is that, it's the AI model for the right data set and question set, isn't it? So AI is designed, AI does get the most out of data. Algorithms are self-learning, data becomes a proper asset because the answers are physically in that data.
Yeah.
But you have to apply the right model to find the answers. And now the role of data is more important than it's ever been, because it can create that competitive advantage, and cutting and pasting your corporate data into ChatGPT is just not very smart. Because in the future, if you have the best data in a competitive industry, even if everybody else is using the same tools, it's the best data that's going to win, because it's going to give the best answers, right? And I think one of the things that people are not doing is they're not determining if they really need AI, or more importantly, if they're ready for AI. And I know we're going to talk about some of the implementation challenges a little later, but that's the thing that I always think about when we have conversations with new or prospective clients, or even or other organizations I work with, is AI, and I'm like, but what do you want to use it for? Oh yeah, we need AI, but what for? Explain it to me. What is the use case? What do you want it to do? What data are you going to feed it? What questions do you want to ask? And it's, some people I think want to be on the bandwagon to say that they do AI without really understanding what it can actually do for them.
Yeah, because it's trendy, like it used to be, but big data or blockchain or whatever. So what are some, like, not obstacles, what are the challenges in operations which can successfully, you think, apply the AI technologies, like in areas of operations and maybe service management?
Well, so some of the implementation challenges that we should all keep in mind are common ones whenever you're rolling out technology, really. But AI specifically, because data is its core asset, is, do we have sufficient data? Is it of good quality? Because we want to train our AI systems on relevant data for the topic that we're trying to understand. So data scarcity, I think, is one of the challenges that we've seen a lot. And the other thing is that sometimes having the data isn't good enough, because you have security reasons why you don't want to put it in the model, or you have particular sensitivities around certain types of data that not everybody can see. So I think understanding the data sets is one thing, one challenge that we've seen a lot. And then the next thing that jumps to my mind is infrastructure. There's a lot of outdated infrastructure in there. You remember that AI models consume power, and quite a lot of compute power, because they're, in a lot of cases, they're quite complex algorithms. So I think about that. But I think a lot of times what I come back to is, can I access the data? Do we have integrations of the systems? Or do I have line of sight? Line of sight is all I really need, So a lot of it's down to data. And then I think about people, and I think about ethical, legal, and moral resistance. So Kuba, you talked about the trust and the answers that you get out of certain models, ChatGPT being one of the models. And of course, that then leads to the thought of, well, these models are programmed. So the algorithm itself is built by a programmer. So we have to be careful that there is no bias programmed into the algorithms as well. So it suddenly becomes quite kind of complex in that ethical, legal, and sort of moral area. Petra needs to leave. Thanks for joining, Petra.
Thank you, Petra.
And also, I think people then sometimes they're on the AI journey, and then they overestimate what AI is going to do for them. Sometimes it's brilliant to hear people are interested in it. They have a use case. They can see value in other use cases, and then suddenly that's okay. We've got an AI system. It will solve everything for us, and that's not necessarily true. And then I think it comes down to cost. Fundamentally, this is a technology solution. It's not a one-time hit. The models, whilst they're self-learning, people bring on different use cases which require a different model or a change to the model. Sometimes they actually need multiple models, and that there's costs and there's upkeep of the whole ecosystem that is AI. So cost, I think, is something that people often underestimate, or they don't really think about. They just want to be on this cool AI journey. So those are the things that mostly I keep in my mind when I'm thinking about challenges that we might face.
My kind of joke always around this is that people say they want all of the AIs, and I've been hearing that for years, and it's as you know, I think our answer was always to have a bit of a deeper dive into AI and talking to potential clients and people around about their problems, and we bringing the expertise and on this, and then we bring technological expertise, and they bring like the domain expertise, and we can kind of meet in the middle and understand where AI is the solution and where it's not, if to which problems and which workflows.
Yeah, so it's understanding their internal challenges, right? So if you look at a lot of companies, particularly bigger companies, they've got an aging workforce. and there is tons and tons of knowledge in people. It's not written down anywhere. It's stuff that, you know, Janet in the kitchen knows, or Bob the cleaner happens to understand this particular idiosyncrasy of the business, and it's not written down, but it's a real thing. And
it's written down, but it's not structured, right? Like you can find it sometimes.
Yes, okay, yeah, okay, that's true. In a lot of cases, you need to know where to go to get the data. Yeah, you're right. And so that that kind of link juice disappears, doesn't it, as people start to retire, because they take that, you know, they've been through several M&As, which usually means there's been a lot of A, very little M, and data's all over the place, but somebody will know where to get it. And the other thing I think about is repetition. You know, you hear a lot of times, wherever we go, you hear about manual processes still, and you think, wow, well, you know, why don't you have a tool that does that for you? Or more to the point, let me give you a model that will help you do that. And that's where I think we have to overcome, you know, as I said earlier, challenges like trust. You know, is the computer doing the right thing? And the worry, I think, that the morality of some of that is actually, if you tell a computer what to do, it'll just do exactly what it's told. When you do ask a person to do something, they will do what they think they were asked to do. And importantly, sometimes they choose not to do it at all. And so AI can uncover, you know, some misunderstood inefficiencies in your business, which I think is actually good.
Exactly, and that's why there is so much value in taking those findings and new models, new technologies that are now available in the public, like ChatGPT, and take them into an organization, run it on the organization's data. But as we already talked before, there is a lot of security and compliance, legal considerations in doing that. Well, that's why, you know, we always just run the technology, the models, and AI workflows, well, on premise, right? Just the data actually never leaves the organizations. And, you know, we've been experimenting with applying models like ChatGPT to companies' data, and how can we fix this? The problem that I think is the biggest obstacle is not being able to, well, ChatGPT not being able to reference the underlying data point, right? So if you ask it some information, where did it get it from, right? Is it just trying to sound authoritative, or is actually taking this piece of information from somewhere, like a Wikipedia page? So we now have like test models that can do that, can find information within organizations, information landscape. So, you know, a SharePoint document or a Confluence intranet page, and then take that information, put it through a model like ChatGPT, and spit out an answer, right? So spit out an answer, but most importantly, with that reference included there. And so you can click on that, takes you directly to the paragraph in the document that is the basis of the answer that the model gave you. So I think that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's a good segue, actually, because we talked about ChatGPT a fair bit here, but the thing that I think about is some of the use cases that we're helping some of our clients solve. And I think the whole thing around security of data, i.e. the right people having the right access to the right levels, as an example, I think what we're doing with UK policing and dispatch room actually is a really good conversation point around how we're solving some of those issues, particularly if we look at things like access to the police national computer. As an ordinary rank and file officer, I might only have access to, you know, level 1 information, as it were. But if you're more senior, you'll have more information. And even though our tool has you know, access to the whole of PNC, we respect their security model. And so if I'm making the query as an ordinary police officer about something, I can only see the return of information that's relevant at my level, but it will tell me that there's more information, but I would need to go to, you know, in this case, UCuba with a high level access, because there's more information that might assist me in my particular inquiry. But I think what we're doing in dispatch rooms is quite cool. Are we okay to talk about that?
Just maybe high level, but we can talk about this in the same advantage we bring in corporate environment, right? Like finding the links and pointing people to some files, some information which they may not have access to, but they can ask someone who does, and they can.
Yeah. It's the same thought process, isn't it? It's understanding how to model AI capabilities, respecting the security and sensitivity boundaries that are already set inside the company. Yeah, we certainly do that with one of, I won't say the name of the company, but that very large company that we're dealing with at the moment. And you know, if we look at their kind of, I guess, I think they call it document management. I don't think there's any management of their documents actually. But you know, we're now able to look at their 100-page documents, of which there are multiple versions in some cases, and actually pull out the actual piece of information they want from the very latest document, and actually give them options, which is kind of cool. Yeah, I like that.
And I think this brings us the whole circle, right? To the thing that we've been talking about at the beginning. Can AI be the solution to this? What was it? Data tsunami that you know, people right, like that it can understand all the information and point you in the right direction, you know, in a split second, instead of you chasing that through Janet at the water cooler, right?
I mean, it can. Look, at the top of the call, we talked about you know, Moore's law, 20-30 years of, you know, accelerated technology, and this, as you say, data tsunami. I like that. I'll steal that for another chat. But it's true. There is so much data out there, and the thing about AI, it's recursive, right? So you give it another data source, or you give it more data, and it will continue, or you're building on a question, it will continually search all of the information it searched before. If you ask a human being to do that, you know, you change the parameter of a search, and you know, you're starting from scratch often, where whilst the computer might still be doing that, it does it in super quick time, which is really important.
Just to leave some time for possible questions in case you guys have it. Maybe we can just talk a little bit about how organizations and how people within organizations can start the journey with AI, and how should potential trial project look like?
Who's that question to?
Anybody, whoever feels.
So again, I often think it's, AI is one of those tools, right? You can walk in and say, I've got a suite of AI tools. What problems do you have? And you know, people are going to sit there and look at it and go, I don't know. And actually, they do know. There's hundreds of problems in lots of companies. But so the message is a bit different. I think that we need to. I think we and most AI companies really need to assist people on the journey and understand the use case. You know, and we talked about some earlier. But you know, what problem are you trying to fix? And you know, is AI the right tool for you? Do you have access to the right data? And so really, it's understanding that. A couple of times, what I've seen is people are using tools like Power BI to create some fancy dashboards, which actually they are often saying, well, I've got to move my data, I've got to stretch it, I've got to twist it, I've got to combine it with this other thing, and then I'm not really sure if I've done it right. And it's like, oh, hang on a minute, what is it actually a pretty picture you want, or is it some sort of answer? Are you just looking for trending, or are you looking for irregularities? Are you looking for new connections? And as soon as they start to, you start to kind of give them that thought pattern, they often come up with problems that they know exist, but they're trying to fix with what are these days fairly rudimentary tools, where AI genuinely can help. And if they don't have, if they can't, in some cases, they're not allowed to have the data that they need, but actually AI can take the data, chew it up and spit out an answer, and it's the answer that they want, not necessarily accessing the underlying data. So I think some of those are the kind of conversations that I've seen that we're having. And in some cases, it's conversations like this, right? It's the ability to people who don't know the right questions to ask, or people who want to ask a question but are afraid to ask it for the fear of sounding a bit daft, because everyone's on this AI journey now, aren't they? And the real answer is, really, everybody talks about it, but not everybody is doing it. Or in other cases, people are doing it and they don't realize they're doing it. When we look at, say RPA, robotic process automation, repetitive tasks that we're asking the computer to do, lots of people have been doing that for years and years and don't realize that's one of the building blocks of AI as we see it today.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I think for me, it's getting into the conversations and understanding as well that implementing AI takes a long time, and it takes a long time because you've got to take people along on that journey. So that's my
I think that plays nicely into kind of my thinking about ChatGPT. There's like 2 points I wanted to make. One is that it actually showed people kind of directly, look, that the AI can do those things. And as you kind of, and Pete know, like, we have so many more conversations with clients around AI because they finally understand. A lot of people that didn't understand before are now understand the power of that.
Yeah.
But I think it also shows that more broadly the things we've been trying to do around keeping the humans in the loop, right? And even if the AI gets you 80% there to your task, right? This is fine because you save this 80% of your time. It doesn't have to be get you 100% there, because this will rarely happen, right? And I think a lot of AI projects failed in the past because people were thinking, all right, we need to get 100% there, right?
Yeah.
Does this project getting us 100% there? Oh, it's not. Okay, let's scrap this. The answer to this is that exactly like having a humans in the loop where the models, the software gets you 80% there, the humans get you 20% further. And in the process, the machine learning models, the AI models can learn, and next month it can get you 81% there. And you kind of approaching this better. Well, you're improving with time, but you are constantly using that and improving rather than like scrapping something that doesn't work 100% from the get-go.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, it comes back to sheer volume of data. The machine can just get through it. Yeah. I mean, you create a good point there, actually. It's augmentation, isn't it? Rather than replacement of the human mind. And I think back to the project I'm not allowed to talk about, where actually what we're doing is all of those data sources that we're tapped into are available to the human operators. It's just it takes them minutes of time, and in some cases, some of the incidents they're dealing with, they don't have minutes of time.
Oh yeah.
They just don't. And so when you can give them the right information from lots of data sources, recursively searched as new parts of the query arrive, then you allow them to use the very best resources that they have available as quickly as possible, which has been described in some of the people we talked about as a game changer to what they do as an industry. So I think it will be interesting over this next period of time, the point we can talk about it properly and openly, that people start to understand this is the real true power of AI.
It also creates this funny contrast for me, but I think it actually illustrates a point where you talked about Police National Computer, this system that the UK uses to record certain types of crime. It's a DOS system, like, so you access it through a DOS interface. And when we take the data from that and use kind of very latest machine learning models on the data. There's this contrast, something from the 90s being used with kind of like the new technology, and that there is so much worth and value in that data. It just locked in this archaic interface, and I think that's a case for many private companies, many organizations, that there's a lot of data, but it's there's no API, there's no kind of modern way of accessing that data. So people have been using, like, humans are the API, right? Like you kind of interact with that system, right? And so when you are you need to do something, you use other humans as your API to those systems. But we can
so
kind
that
of
brings me back. It's not just outdated infrastructure; it's outdated tech, in fact, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's the story of the data. So,
so this is very interesting, and I think we'll soon be able to talk about that project more widely after some of the conferences that we'll have around that.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, so we have 10 minutes for questions, if there are any. So Samuel, Lady Gladys Show, and Adrian, do you have any questions for us? If you are shy, you can text, unless they are not here.
I think it's nice if we type the questions. Yeah.
Okay, I think. Let's assume they are shy.
So, hi everyone.
Hi. Hi.
So, sorry, I joined this meeting a little bit late. So, if I understood all like questions and answers and all, so from a global point of view, I think ChatGPT it's kind of like a baby to whom we keep feeding information.
Yeah.
And it keeps growing with time, and I think there'll be a point in time, let's say a prediction 5 to 6 years from now, that's not really a specialist prediction. I'm not I'm not especially a geek, but I think by then ChatGPT will be mature enough to really automate and really help a lot of companies in doing many tasks. So I don't know if my understanding of this is right. If not, any of you could kindly correct me. That's just the sense of my question.
So interesting there, because I'm not sure if you were joined when Cooper mentioned this. So ChatGPT is just one model, right? And there are lots of different models, and of course, models evolve over time. So yeah, I'm with you. At some point in time, it might be 5, 6, 10 years from now, ChatGPT will have evolved its model to do more things than it does today. And that's the same for everybody in the AI race, right? Everybody is doing the same thing. We have, in some of the modules that we have at Untrite, there are at least 3 distinct models that I'm aware of that we deploy for different circumstances. And ChatGPT will do the same, right? It will evolve on the OpenAI platform.
Yes, so I think there's like kind of 2 components to your observation, Samuel. So yes, it is like a toddler that you kind of teach, and so it will definitely improve. What I don't think so, but I think there is this fundamental problem with those large language models, that the thing that they generate, the text that they generate, it doesn't have, the model doesn't really have any kind of connection with reality. It doesn't understand, for example, if you ask it, what's 2 + 2? It doesn't really understand this, that 2 is a number, 2 is the other 2 is the other number, and plus is like an operation. It doesn't have this kind of higher level reasoning around kind of the real, it doesn't have the connection to the real world. If just seen, people writing that 2 + 2 is 4, and that's why it's generating, oh, it's 4. So there will have to be a much more, like a different architecture of the model that will then be able to answer some other complex questions. But your conclusion that, you know, in 5 years, it will help companies automate some processes, 100%. It's already happening. And like, for example, with our test that I mentioned before, that where we do some processing with the data and then use large language models like ChatGPT to generate an answer, you know, this is already possible to use this in production settings where it helps companies with day-to-day activities.
Yeah,
I see there's some more questions.
Yeah, for me, ChatGPT is very much doing kind of the Google Translate Alexa type stuff. You know, I can ask my smart home tons of questions and it'll give me tons of answers. If I choose to go and then research them or ask it where did it find its data, it will tell me. And so for me, it sits in that group of technologies. What I can't do today, which is a bit different with ChatGPT, of course, is I can't deploy any of my smart home technologies onto my corporate data. Can't do that. So OpenAI has certainly changed the dial on that capability. So that's kind of what I think.
Interesting.
Adrian says, a bit shy. Saw a couple of screenshots on LinkedIn listing plugins to ChatGPT, claiming this is what App Store was to smartphones. Do you see big business opportunity now? Is it too early to tell? My initial reaction is I think it's too early to tell. You know, Kuba can jump in a second for a more technical analysis, but my view here is that, as I've just described, in my mind, at least today, ChatGPT falls inside that smart home, smart speaker kind of space, because you know I can ask Alexa to sing me a song and she will. I can ask Alexa to do tons of things in the same way that people are using ChatGPT today. But that's not to say that the model can't become multiple models, that the model can't be geared to different insights. But I think it's just too early, because at the moment people are using it mostly as a bit of a chatbot and to write a bit of poetry, right?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think, you know, plugins to ChatGPT would be this like big bang opportunity that happened with app stores. At least not right now. I think.
So
it's too early to tell.
Yeah, I saw one of the use cases with, it was in Instacart, I think. So someone asked like ChatGPT to give some idea. Okay, so I think they took the picture of what they had in the fridge, and they asked ChatGPT to give some ideas for dinner. And ChatGPT, you know, spit some answers and said like, you should buy this and that if you want to create that kind of dish, because you're missing it. And because Instacart was connected with ChatGPT, it allowed immediately from the same level to make a purchase, basically. So it just kind of streamlined the whole purchase. I don't know if it's operational, but that was one of the examples they were claiming to be working on.
But I think this is a nice kind of thought for the ending, that, you know, there's so many ideas. It's just a beginning. We are definitely in like a special time with this technology, that, you know, this is very generic kind of toy right now, right? But there's so much potential. That it's you know, when we meet in 6 months' time, there will be so much more information, so much more ideas and tests that have been done on that, and hopefully we can as well show you some of the things that we've been working on in this area.
Okay.
Yeah, for me, a lot of it comes back to what was said earlier. You know, in the future, the competitive advantage from data is going to come from the people with the very best data. because ultimately people are going to be using, whichever brand of AI tool it is, the models broadly will converge, won't they? Just like in every other competitive industry, people start to do the same thing. And actually, it's the asset, the data asset, which is going to be the differentiator, I believe.
Oh, yeah, just joined in time. Yes, and definitely the baseline is that people who will understand how to use AI will be much more powerful than those who don't.
Yeah, that's true. This is why, now it's almost too late, because people have been investing in AI. You look at some of the huge global tech companies, and they've heavily invested in AI. So, mainstream corporates are already behind the game. So, one of the
but like, so as us as individuals, right? Like, oh, I think some people got confused and they just start joining.
Oh.
Wow, maybe the daylight savings time was on Sunday, but
I don't know, but
we'll have a
LinkedIn,
link. We'll post a link to the
so
recording.
Stefan and Jan, if you have any questions, please do ask now, or you can just reach out to us after the session. We recorded the session, so feel free to get the recording. Yes, I guess that will be it. Thank you. Oh yes, I think people just got confused. They're just joining now.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
It's okay. We had the time at 3 o'clock UK time on the.
Yes, and then we changed it some time ago. Probably not everyone got the memo.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. Something happened with with the LinkedIn Live. We were supposed to be on LinkedIn Live, and in the end, not everybody could see this. We had to move to Zoom. But anyway, we will post the recording on our LinkedIn page, and also feel free to connect with us directly, and we can answer any questions you may have.
We will do, no problem at all. Thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll have to run this again anyway.
Again,
like I mentioned, no, again. I mean the next iteration, right? Because like I mentioned, I think in a month's time, there'll be so much more to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see how ChatGPT's hallucination figures change with time. It's 15 to 20%, vaporware at the moment. Some of the answers it gives, right?
Yeah,
because it's creative and that's the model. I'd really like to talk about a bit more about operational challenges, about how people get started in this field. Because I think I've said a few times on previous webinars and certainly with some of the clients that we've met, if you had Google search for all your internal data, wouldn't that be brilliant? And everyone's like, oh yeah, that'd be amazing. It's like, well, I have that, we can do that. But it's then that you find out, as I said earlier in the call, that you can't access the data for security or sensitivity reasons, or for lots of other ethical or moral things that people throw at you. So I think it's understanding that the technology can have access to data without the human being exposed to the underlying data source itself. And I think that it's a case of building trust in the systems and the people obviously programming it to make sure that we're not having unfair bias. So I'd really like to get into that in a future one of these, to be honest.
Perfect.
Definitely, we will organize it.
I think that's a good.
Thank you so much for joining, and thank you, and sorry everyone with this for this confusion, the time zones and the platform.
Okay, thank you.
So looking forward to speaking with you directly. Feel free to connect.
Okay, thank you. We'll do.
Thank you,
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, folks.